So you want to upgrade your audio game to the next level, but you don't quite know what to upgrade, which is why I made this guide for you guys. I'm going to be ranking the best upgrades in terms of worst to best, as well as which price bracket is currently the best bang for your buck. Starting off with the first upgrade, we have cables, and this is going to be a bit controversial because some people can tell a difference, some people think cables are just a scam. Now, I personally hear a tiny difference if I A/B them side by side, as evident through this video I made a while ago. However, I was also pretty much guessing at that point, and if you're gonna go based off of audio memory alone, it's pretty much a placebo effect at that point. It also doesn't help that the graph doesn't really show much of a change, and it really comes down to like graphing and measuring variance. And even if you do hear a tiny difference, it doesn't really upgrade the sound per se. It does change it like a little bit in terms of the flavor. If someone is claiming a $1,000 cable increases the soundstage and technicalities, run away. Also, nowadays the vast majority of cables are pretty well built and have very low distortion and fairly comfortable for the most part. So as long as you don't get a cable that, you know, it's like breaking on you, like literally like physically you hear the statics, the wires are breaking, then you're gonna be fine. I guess you can make the case for inverter polarity and how that can affect the resolution by a tiny bit, but for 95% of you guys, you're not gonna hear a difference. Don't worry about it. And you also don't need to buy an expensive cable to change the polarity. Just flip it. So because of the inconsistencies, the very low return on investment, and no real way to accurately and scientifically test it outside of memory, I will put cables at the very bottom of your priorities, because you should really only be buying it for like the design, the looks, the build quality, and how it feels. Moving on, we have your sources, your DACs, your amps, your DAPs, and I know a lot of people claim to hear a bigger difference in their sources, and I would actually agree with them to a certain extent. For example, if you're plugging raw docs straight into your PC or phone that doesn't have a great audio chip with a lot of like distortion or low power output, then yeah, upgrading to a better source will give you a noticeable difference when it comes to just how like clean and refined the sound is, and less crackle and pops. To me personally, it's kind of like cables. If you A/B them back and forth, yeah, there might be a slight difference in the flavor of the sound. For example, some people claim that the tube amps give you more like warm and analog feeling to the sound, but they are not objective in the way that like, is it gonna give you a bump in resolution and technicalities? No, I wouldn't say so. I personally use a clean and neutral source like the Topping G5 or the Modu M2, and they are very capable, you know, low distortion, high power output, plays back most of the IEMs with no like issues. You're not gonna need any more power than the G5 or the Modu M2. So when I switch from the G5, which is like a clean source, to another more expensive like clean source, I do not hear much of a difference in terms of like, you know, technicalities, resolution, stuff like that. But I will say there are some DAPs and amps that have like built-in like bass boost, EQ, which obviously will affect how the, you know, the IEM sounds, because you're altering the tuning at that point. But that is more of like a EQ thing, which we'll talk about later. Now, in the past, I have experienced a difference in openness when it comes to very expensive amps, but I don't know like if it's because of memory or placebo, because I didn't get to A/B them directly. So I don't know if it's like legit or not. But all in all, I do believe that sources do play a bigger role than cables, and the difference is definitely more noticeable. However, is a $1,000 amp going to change the game for you? No. The ROI is also on the lower end, and because of that, I'm going to place it at mid priority. Next, we have your hair, your glasses, the comfort, and the fit, and this is actually pretty underrated, because if you don't get a good fit and seal, then the sound is going to leak out, it's going to bounce differently, and it's going to play differently inside your ear, which changes the overall tuning of the IEM. And when it comes to hair and glasses for overhead headphones, these actually make a decently noticeable difference, because anything that gets in the way of the pads is gonna alter the way the pads like fits in your ears, which, you know, affects how the sound bounces inside the pads and into your ears, which affects the tuning overall. So basically, if you don't get a good fit, this can result in peakier treble, less refined, like weaker bass as the seal breaks, or even some wonky imaging. But most importantly, your ROI decreases drastically if the fit is uncomfortable and you just can't wear them for a long period of time. For example, if you spend $1,000 on the Monarchs, but you can't listen to them from like more than an hour because they're just too big, they're too uncomfortable, whereas you compare that to someone who can listen to them for like all day long, 8 hours plus, then comparatively you are essentially missing out 8 times the value because you aren't able to listen to it as much. So because of how much it affects the ROI and how it alters the sound physically, I would put comfort and fit in high priority, and the only reason it doesn't go any higher is because it can be a bit difficult and inconvenient to find the right fit if you don't have access to a demo store. You know, you gotta like buy it and you gotta return it and resell this stuff, or you don't have like a good return policy, which can be a bit of a hassle. However, this transitions nicely into our next topic, which are tips, and these are going right up to the must do tier. They are not only cheap, but you can also visibly see the difference on the graph and how it alters the sound, and most importantly, they can make or break an IEM. For example, I recently reviewed the D62, and in its stock tips, it is just very peaky, very sharp, and not as natural and smooth when I switched it over to the Sankai wides, and I couldn't even get like the Pilgrim to stay in my ears for more than 5 minutes with the stock tips until I switched over to the Velvet to Venus, which made the fit a lot better. And you know, if I didn't have those tips, I wouldn't even be able to listen to the Pilgrim, and it just makes it pretty much unusable. So not only can tips make an IEM sound better, but they also increase your ROI because it increases the fit, the comfort, which allows you to listen to them for a longer period of time, which increases the value you get out of an IEM. So guys, please tip roll. But moving on, after tips, we have EQ and modding. So think mesh filters, tape mods, and I will say this is also pretty important since it not only increases the ROI because you're able to try different types of sound through EQing or like trying like different mods, but it's also very cheap. EQing is free, right? And the mesh filters are like $5. It also saves you money and time from buying, trying, you know, returning and reselling the IEMs that you didn't like when you could have just EQ'd and got 80% to 90% of the picture. Now, a potential downside is that it does take more work, and some people are just a bit turned off when it comes to the application part. They don't like EQing, they don't like modding, and there's also the difference when it comes to the driver timbre as well. But overall, I would still put this at the top of high priority because you just get so much variety and flexibility out of it, and as long as you have a decent IEM, you can pretty much EQ to any sound that you like, and it's free. Then after that, we have pricing, and I'm not talking about diminishing returns, we'll get into that later, but more so I'm talking about upgrading to a more expensive IEM simply for the sake that it's more expensive. Now, although there is a solid correlation when it comes to more expensive IEMs typically being better than cheaper ones because they have better drivers, they're better tuned, more refined. However, with how fast Sci-Fi is progressing these days, it's not really a top priority in my opinion. Yes, you will obviously get a slight bump in performance if you move up to the Mono Mark IIIs from the High Force, but is it 2 times better? No. Instead of looking for pricing, I would personally upgrade based off of the tuning preference that I'm looking for and what you prioritize in the musical experience. For example, if I currently own the Explorer and I love listening at a loud volume, I love the immersion, then it would be better for me to upgrade to the original EJ07s, the Arcadias, the Odyssey, since those sets actually do what I want, which is scaling and immersion. Yes, they're going to be cheaper than the Mono Mark IIIs, they're not going to be as good technically, but I will enjoy those a lot more because they actually fit the sound and experience that I'm looking for. So although there is some merit to higher pricing equating to better performance, the ROI and diminishing returns are just very bad because you're not gonna get a 10 times return going from a $200 set to a $2,000 set. And also the current like $500, $300 IEMs are already very good in terms of value. So because of those reasons, I'm gonna put it at the top of mid priority because yeah, there is a difference, but there's also huge diminishing returns. Then finally, let's talk about the best price brackets currently in terms of value and diminishing returns. And this is the $400 range, the $150 range, and the $50 to $70 range. In the $400 range, you got stuff like the EM10s, DT Pros, High Force, Pilgrim Dusk, Studio Force, which are all very close technically to the $500, $600 stuff, but still like very good in terms of tuning. You get a lot of different tuning on top of the performance. And then at around $150, although these are not going to be as flavorful and diverse in the tuning, so you got your like all-rounders, these are very bang for your bucks when it comes to sets like the Super Mix 4, the Chopin, Nova, EM6L, and similarly, just like how the $350 price bracket is very close technically to the $600 price bracket, the $150 price bracket is also very similar tech-wise compared to the $350 ones. Then lastly, at around $50 to $70, the variety comes back with stuff like the Tangzu Yixuanji, which is airy. You got the Q5 Pro if you want a slight V-shape, you got the Beast, you got the EW300, and even the EA500LM on sale. These are very close technically to the $150 sets, but just a lot less, like almost half the price on sale, and you also get a lot of variety on top. Now as for the $200 to $250 sets, although these have a lot of variety and they are more unique per se, so for example the ZGAT Odyssey, the Arcadias, the Cadenza 4, even the Tantrum Origin if you want the neutral set, these aren't as good like technically as the $350 set. I think personally I would just save up and go for the $350 ones, or you know, just like skip this region and get something in the $100 to $150 range, which is much better when it comes to like bang for your buck technically. I would also avoid anything past $2,000. These have huge astronomical diminishing returns unless you have spare money to just like burn. I guess at that point it doesn't really matter, right? But for most people, these just avoid the 2K plus price range. And if you have a starter set like the True 2, the EW100P, I would personally like skip the $40, $30 price range and save up for the $60, $70 price range like the EW300, because you will see a bigger difference when it comes to technical performance and just like overall refinement. And although there are some good sets in the $600 price range, a lot of them are just not that good when it comes to like, you know, pure value. There is some stuff like the Tangzu Xianwu if you want a clean balance set. Same with the Volaire, my second unit of the Volaire at least. But for the rest of them, they're just kind of like okay, they perform what you expect for that price range. So if you currently have something in the $200 to $300 price range and you're thinking of upgrading, I would personally skip the $600, $700, $800 price range and just save up past like 1K. You got the Monarchs, you got the Prestige LTD, you got the Helios, you got the Crimson. You're gonna see a much bigger difference going from something like the Dusk to like the Prestige LTD or like the Crimson. But yeah, aside from that, I hope this guide was helpful. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Rark's Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Discall Scaldus, B Urac, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Patrick, Paulie J, Mr. Gorillas, Anton Risto, Gis Seng Young, Ed Dunlap, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Ben Thompson, OB, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Treble Well Extended, Wizard, Frickalicious, Andric, Ricardo, Tapas, and Checo Norris. Thank you guys so much.